Good evening, good evening. How's everyone? It's terrific. You know, when we typically speak of diversity, we do so with a smile. It is a topic infused with the positive belief that a pluralistic society with an ever-expanding definition of us is a better world. But diversity and inclusion are also euphemisms. They let us disengage from more painful truths about our society. We openly help the historically disadvantaged, but we closet away the history that made them disadvantaged in the first place. By that I mean the barbaric system of slavery and its lasting aftermath. This year is the 400th anniversary of slavery in America. The year 1619 was the start of a 250-year run in which black people were not considered human beings, but instead were merely property that could be bought, sold at will, and lawfully beaten, raped, and killed. The New York Times, in a must-read series on slavery, makes a compelling case that 1619, not 1776, is the true origin of America. If one looks with fresh eyes, you will see that every facet of contemporary life in this country is derived from slavery. As the Times wrote, and I quote, "From slavery grew nearly everything that has made America exceptional. Its economic might, its industrial power, its electoral system, diet and popular music, the inequities of our public health and education, its astonishing penchant for violence, its income inequality, the example it sets for the world as the land of freedom and equality, its slang, its legal system, and the endemic racial fears and hatreds that continue to plague it to this day. Our forefathers, casting themselves somewhat ironically as slaves to the British Crown, declared their independence with these soaring words, 'We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal, endowed by their Creator with certain unalienable rights.' But as these words were inked, 20% of the population was in chains. As the Times pointedly said, we are a nation founded on an ideal and on a lie. While the ideals are etched in our monuments and form the vision we try to project to the world, it is the hypocrisy of the lie that America has had to continuously confront, often bitterly and often violently. There have always been two ways to rectify the lie of our founding ideals. The first is simply to write blacks and women, for that matter, out of the group of people entitled to equality and God-given rights. This approach has dominated our history. Slaves were property, not people. Freed slaves were a separate inferior race and not entitled to the benefits of citizenship. Supreme Court law, pseudoscience, politics, and religion all seeded and nurtured the toxic myth of racial inferiority, a myth that underpinned 2 centuries of laws and public policies designed to keep the descendants of slaves starved of the fruits of American democracy. But there was always a more faithful and humane path to making America a more perfect union. It could simply eradicate the lie and make equality for all the truth. For a brief period after the Civil War, the country experimented with doing just that. Blacks served in Congress. They received land, they built businesses, attended universities. But this blossom flowered only briefly, choked by the weeds of Jim Crow laws, fertilized by a belief in white supremacy. But black Americans never stopped fighting to be full Americans. A long, bloody struggle led to the 13th, 14th Amendments and groundbreaking civil rights laws. These efforts wrote the playbook later used by women and LGBTQ people and other groups to win their full rights. But lies die hard. This country has a long investment in the racial inferiority narrative. Murder in El Paso, white supremacy in Charlottesville, child separation on the border, and chance that they will not replace us dims the light and spreads the darkness. Slavery existed for 250 years. But it's important to remember we have only been legally free for 50. Progress is precarious. Diversity is wonderful, but is only meaningful if the equality of all people is protected from those who want to go back to living the lie. To be a true diversity warrior requires more than championing the values of pluralism while sitting in air-conditioned offices. It requires we stand. Stand against the suffocating heat of racism. Stand against hostility toward the LGBTQ community. Stand against the oppression of women. And stand for the fundamental equality of all, giving true meaning to our founding ideals. We have traveled very far from the shores of Point Comfort, where the first slave ships landed, and we simply cannot go back. As black leaders at the time of the Civil War said, to those who urged them to go back to where they came from, they said, this is our home, and this is our country. Beneath its sod lie the bones of our forefathers. Here we were born, and here we will die. I am personally honored to be part of an industry committed to making America a more perfect union. Thank you.